So the first thing is please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Ari Westhaver. I'm a queer trans man, living and farming on unceded Kwantlen, Stolo, and Semiahmoo territory. I think also bordering on the Matsqui territory. I was a founding member, so whenever those years were, for probably about 4 years, maybe 5 years. At the time, like there was just nothing for queer youth. So I'm 25 now. I was born in '98, and a couple years before I was born, books were being banned in Surrey, and unfortunately, between '96 and 2012 or whatever it was when I was 13, not much had changed. There was still a lot of homophobia. I grew up in the Newton area of Surrey and was I came out very young. I was maybe 12 years old and was quite masculine, presenting as an AFAB person, and that garnered a lot of really negative attention in public and in schools. And so I was looking for a space where I could share my lived experience with other queer and trans people in Surrey. Um, so had went to Surrey Pride in 2012. It was my first Pride after coming out, and got connected with folks there. And we said, well, why don't we just make a space that's like facilitated by adults, but is essentially by and for youth. Yeah.
Yeah, so do you remember the first project you were a part of with Youth for a Change?
Before Youth for a Change, I mean, there were a lot of queer kids in Newton, like by the Newton Exchange, because like folks would hang out in the Newton wave pool and whatnot. And like, so it was like a very bubbling hub in Newton. Otherwise, there's like a lot of industrial areas, but that's like where you would see queer people. And so, yeah, we created an art exhibit in that forest, and, it was vandalized. But we just came back the next week and kept putting it back up. And I know that that project kind of continued for a few years after that. I don't know if folks still do that, but that was
Yeah.
something I remember because it was really accessible. Again, I was like 13 years old, didn't have like policy language, but what I knew was that it was really important to like take space as a queer person in my community and just be persistent. So that those actions, like just being creative, having fun while also sending like a really positive message that you belong here is something that I carry forward into my activist work today.
Hmm. So do you remember any particular challenges when you were, doing the work in Youth for Change, especially in the early years?
Um, Challenges. I mean, just like lack of public acceptance. Like, we've campaigned for a long time to get Surrey Hall to fly a pride flag, and they just wouldn't. So, we would also sit in on city council meetings, and, sometimes they'd listen to us, but oftentimes they'd look at us. A number of the youth in that group at that time, like the founders, were unhoused. And I think that city council often wrote us off. So that was really challenging, but only like made us want to try harder. Um, but yeah, so just like lack of public acceptance and like lack of local government acceptance has was really challenging and continues to be challenging.
So how has your time in Youth for a Change affected your life today? And do you think it has influenced the person you are today?
Being in Youth for a Change is like what gave me the like sense of self and like assuredness and like ability to like develop community in spaces where community, like queer community, was not around already, has really influenced my ability to like create community where I am now in the Fraser Valley. The other thing that I would say that my time in Youth for a Change really gave me an appreciation for is intergenerational organizing. So hold on, I have the book here. Basically queer, wherein we had different prompts, and as a youth I would respond to the prompt one way, and then as the elders they would respond to like our responses. And so it created this really interesting intergenerational dialogue that really challenged me in my thinking about queer issues as someone who was maybe 16 at the time, and I don't now I read some of the poetry that I wrote and I'm like, oh my God, you're so cringy. But like the art was the point, but so was like learning to have intergenerational, like really meaningful intergenerational relationships.
Are you still involved in social justice? What are you doing
Yeah.
now?
My more ongoing activism has been through the National Farmers Union, which is a direct membership organization that is basically organized by and for farmers who are fighting for a food system that's rooted in economic and social justice as well as agroecology. I've also been on the farm worker working group for a couple of years, and our work kind of centers around like providing farm workers with skills to negotiate contracts, know what their rights are under labor code, also are really like in solidarity with like migrant worker justice organizations. So yeah, a lot of things. Not necessarily queer, although sometimes people do like offer to put me on DEI because of the things that I learned. Like I really don't think I'd be doing the activist work that I'm doing at the capacity that I'm doing had I not gotten my roots like in queer activism in the early 2010s and also in like anarchist spaces in mid 2010s in Vancouver.
Do you have a favorite memory from Youth for a Change? Anything like that?
As for the specific memory, it was really so when our book was published, it was just we did a like a theatrical performance event and I got to read some poetry. Some people told stories, others sang. Like it was just a really fun community experience and I got to share it with like my parents and partner at the time and so on. And yeah, so it was again just like creating community space and connecting through art was something that was very meaningful and is still something that's very meaningful to me in organizing spaces.
I think that about does it.